All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for indulging me with actually playing the entire song. Brings me to the point, most of the music you hear on this show is provided courtesy of Magnitude. Pay a small fee, and in return, get to deal with lots of independent artists who are trying to make it in the music business on their own. I like that independent attitude, and of course that makes it 100% podcast safe. However, one exception to that rule is the song you just heard. Ordinarily, I don't play it in its entirety, but it's been a while since I actually listened to it. Got to listen into it again. It's a little long and drawn out, but I really like hearing the little clips and the snippets of things that they have in the background there towards the last couple of minutes of the songs. Things that in the artist's mind either were miracles or occasions when it came time for you to look for miracles to try and make your life better. The reason I have special permission to play that is Cash Eslow, who's the vocalist and one of the writers of the song, is a good personal friend. And, of course, his co-writer, Steve Miller, I did not have the pleasure of actually meeting him, and unfortunately, he passed away this last year. And ever so often, I like to play the song in its entirety, just for that particular reason, to honor their effort. They wrote a lot of songs together. They were working on some material at the time of his death. This was actually the last song that they had worked on, and was to a point where they felt like they had finished, although they were still talking about doing a little tweaking. Naturally, if you listen to the song, the ending's a little long. They might have looked to shorten that up. But all in all, not real sure exactly where you would have cut from that. I think in the end it's become a perfect homage to Stephen. And I think it does still do a pretty good job of showcasing Cash's talents. At any rate, thank you for indulging me, and I will stop the public service announcement now. And there was one more thing I wanted to talk about tonight before we got into this whole religious freedom debacle, and that is that today the Justice Department decided that Lois Lerner doesn't have to worry about criminal contempt charges. You see, the Department of Justice informed House Republicans early today, today being Wednesday, that it will not prosecute former IRS employee Lois Lerner for contempt of Congress. That, of course, after she refused to testify about her role in the IRS targeting scandal. Now, I love how they put it, Lois Lerner, former employee. This woman was heading up the IRS. All right, this woman was the top dog at the time. She was put there specifically for targeting purposes. She had a history of it. And again, when this scandal first broke out, dedicated almost an entire show to talking about her and her history of targeting people and other positions she had, and it was pretty obvious that that's why she got this job in the first place, why she got the promotion to be the top person there. At any rate, of course, the Republicans had argued that Lerner should face criminal contempt charges after she read a statement into the record telling Congress that, of course, she was innocent, and then she invoked her Fifth Amendment rights not to testify any further for fear she might incriminate herself. Now, many Republicans argued at the time that in a courtroom, her reading an opening statement would mean she waived her right to invoke the Fifth Amendment and therefore had to answer questions afterwards. If you'll recall, we even made that case on the show when we were talking about that. Now, of course, the House responded by voting in May that Miss Lerner was, in fact, in contempt of Congress, a move that tossed the issue to the Justice Department. But you see, the GOP suspected that President Barack Obama's Justice Department would never follow up, and the House was told by Deputy Attorney General James Cole in July that the department had discretion in deciding whether to pursue charges against the beloved Lois. Of course, Early Wednesday, the department confirmed to House Speaker John Boehner that it would not pursue the case. The decision sparked outrage, understandably so, among Republicans who said it proved the Department of Justice is a political tool of the White House and not an instrument of justice. This just in. Come on, this isn't exactly a news flash, is it? When has the Department of Justice been an instrument of justice since Eric Holder took the reins? I'm not certain that you could make the case that it was doing a stellar job beforehand, but certainly since Eric Holder took over as the top law enforcement officer of the land, the Attorney General, things like Fast and Furious took place as opposed to things like justice. But at any rate, the outrage swept through Congress. Many people were talking about it today, and the bottom line is it is completely and totally outrageous. So this story is also going to be in the running for the outrage of the week situated. In fact, this may be one of those weeks where I have to have 2 outrages of the week. Actually, the way this week is shaping up, there may actually have to be a third, and that would be historic. Because I try to keep it limited to 1, but I just don't see that happening. I mean, all this evidence just came out recently. The missing emails that were supposed to have been destroyed the last couple of weeks have been magically found, and many of them have been offered up as evidence, and it's pretty clear that exactly what we said was going on, intentional targeting of Tea Party and religious organizations in particular, intentional targeting of certain people that were looking to run political campaigns, challenging prominent Democrats in certain districts, intentional targeting of anybody that had a voice of dissent against the Supreme Commander, Mr. Ruler, Mr. Emperor, Mr. Occupier, the Hussein Obama himself. Utterly outrageous. Utterly outrageous. Don't know what you guys think. Don't know what you guys feel. I imagine most of the folks that listen to this show, I'm probably preaching to the choir. But it aggravates me to no end. We have a system put in place, and the system works when it is executed properly. But we've allowed everything to become so politicized. We've allowed the victor to have the spoils for so long that the idea of what justice even means doesn't seem to occur to anyone. No one understands what fair means. You tell a poor person that you want the rich to pay their fair share. Seems like that means the rich should have to give up everything they have. That's not fair. That's not what fair is. Just like all people being born equal. That doesn't mean a guarantee of anything. It means you have opportunities that present themselves up front. That's what you have. That's where it is. People don't seem to understand what these simple things mean anymore, and it's only because they hear what they want to hear. It's because they put their personal interest ahead of any kind of principle. People don't even tend to have principles in the modern age, it seems like. A large number of them seem that way. But even then, that's only the way it seems on the surface, because when you take the time to get to know people, you'll find out that's not the truth. But people fall victim to the media and how things get portrayed. So this is very outrageous. Very. So much so that I have to say it more than once. But for those of you that don't get it, don't understand why this is a big deal, let me put it in simple terms. Now, again, most of the people that listen to this show, I know they get it. I don't have to do this, but bear with me, you guys, because I have to make the assumption that ever so often somebody new stumbles upon the show and might still be listening. And these somebody new people may not be particularly well informed. They may not even be part of the other side of the spectrum, of the political spectrum, that is. They may simply be somewhere more interested in the NCAA tournament than in national headlines. They may be someone who's not taking the time to follow this kind of thing because they don't understand how it affects them. So let me get to the point. Many of the bureaucracies of our government are meant to be non-political. The people that run them get appointed typically by political leaders of the time. The people that run the IRS, generally, they answer to the executive branch. So the president, sitting at the time, gets a big say on that, just like at the Justice Department. The reason for that is because they're the chief executive. It's their responsibility to try and make sure these departments, which have been deemed necessary, whether they actually are or not, we can argue that. That's a different topic altogether. But these departments that have been deemed necessary must be run and must be run efficiently. That's an executive type action. So the chief executive is supposed to, in a non-political fashion, make sure that the proper personnel is in place to make sure these departments run. The IRS, which some would argue shouldn't exist in the first place, not sure that I would disagree with those people, but regardless, it's there now. It has a very powerful reach into everyone's daily life if you're a U.S. citizen. They must be dealt with, and they must be dealt with and handled with care, because they can and will, at the drop of the hat sometimes, make your life utterly miserable. Sometimes for no other reason than the fact that they can. And that's where we run into problems with this. They have acquired so much power, and there are so few checks to that power that they can be perverted into a terrible, terrible weapon to suppress political speech, to suppress conscionable objection. And that's exactly what happened here. So again, like with so many other things, I asked you to put this to the spectrum test. If you don't see that there's a problem with the IRS being used to squash the Tea Party people, those evil, nasty people who just think, hey, you know what? We're taxed enough already. That's what T stands for, taxed enough already, just in case you didn't know. So these people are being targeted, and it's a terrible, terrible thing. But even if you're okay with them doing this, you run into the very simple issue of what happens when, heaven forbid, oh my gosh, Ted Cruz becomes president. And Ted Cruz appoints someone new to be in charge of the IRS. And then, oh my goodness, Ted Cruz decides he doesn't like people that says bad things about the Tea Party. Now, the shoe is on the other foot. Are you okay with the IRS being used to target progressive organizations? Are you okay with your guys being the ones who get attacked? Because if you're not, then you should have the same problem with it happening to the other side. The IRS should never be politicized. The IRS should never be allowed to be used as an instrument to attack your political enemies. It's just that simple. And if you can understand that, then you can understand why this is a big deal. Because what has happened is this person was put in charge specifically for the purpose of attacking and squashing political opposition. That's the exact opposite of the ideas that this country was founded on. It's the exact kind of thing that true, historically speaking, liberals, classical liberals, would have been just as out